last day we were discussing the development of equivalent circuit. Now what we have studied still now is the phasor diagram. So we have seen that in an induction motor, which is basically a single phase motor, we have two windings. The stator winding is a three-phase distributed winding, which is fed from a three-phase supply. And on the rotor, we have either a three-phase winding or a short-circuited squirrel cage winding. Three-phase winding is also short-circuited. That has to be short-circuited externally, not short-circuited on itself. Now, in both the cases, we have a short-circuited winding on the rotor. So what happens? On the stator, as we have a distributed three-phase winding, we have seen that when a distributed three-phase winding is fed from a three-phase supply, it will create a rotating magnetic field. Individually, the three phases create pulsating magnetic field, but the summation of that three field is a rotating magnetic field whose magnitude is constant. At any particular instant of time, it is sinusoidally distributed across the air gap, but it is traveling across the air. So we explain the principle of induction motor from this viewpoint. This rotating magnetic field, as it is rotating with respect to the rotor, will induce, at starting, it will induce EMF in the rotor winding at supply frequency. As the rotor winding is short circuited, so it will, current will circulate. Now this current and the rotating magnetic field interact to produce a torque. So this rotating magnetic rotating flux, and say the phase A current will interact to produce a torque. Similarly, this flux and phase B current will interact to produce a torque. So summation of these these torques are in the same direction. So summation of these three will create a torque that rotates the rotor. Now the phasor what we represent here, that is per phase, that is the phasor of a particular phase. As it is a symmetric machine is symmetric, so the same phasor is valid for other phases also. So it is very similar. The operation is very similar to the transformer in the sense that there is a flux created by the supply in the primary winding, which is linking the secondary winding, and then EMF is induced. So the phasor also looks like the same. So this is the mutual flux phi m. So this flux induces EMF, this minus C1 in the stator winding, and this in the rotor winding. This phasor is 1:1, so this is reflected at E1 here. Now, to create this flux, the machine at present, let us consider the machine is at no load. So to create this flux, the machine draws a current, magnetizing current Im, which is in phase with the flux. But as we know, this alternating magnetic field is associated with eddy current and hysteresis loss. So some active power should be there to provide these losses. So as this Im is is perpendicular with E1, so this cannot supply the losses. So there is actually a current IC which provides the losses. So basically the no load current cannot be only Im, but this one is Im plus this small value IC. So this is the hysteresis angle. This angle depends on the material, the core material, the size of the hysteresis loop. Now at no load in the secondary, that there is no load on the shaft, only the losses. So the secondary current is very small. almost negligible. So speed, as the motor will almost attain a speed which is very slightly different from the synchronous speed. This, so if we put load on the shaft, so what will happen? The rotor will slow down. So as the rotor slows down, slip will increase, slip S will increase. So the EMF induced in the rotor is SE1. So the current I2 will be SE1 divided by R2 dash plus JSX2. So that will be the current. So as we load the machine, then what will happen? S increases, the slip increases. That means the frequency of the rotor circuit SF also increases from no load to full load. But that change is very small. At no load condition, at steady state, that slip is very small, normally 0.0, around 10%, that is 0.01. But for full load slip for a well-designed motor is normally in the range of 4%. Sorry, the no load slip is 1%, and then full load slip is in the range of 4 to 5%. So in the secondary is short circuited, so this will be the current. Now this current will have a reflection in the primary. So this I2 dash is reflected here in the primary. So primary draws a current to compensate this. So this is minus I2 dash. So the total current carried by the primary is now I1. Now this current is flowing in the primary circuit. So primary circuit has a resistance R1 and the reactance X1. So there will be internal drops, I1 R1, I1 X1. So this induced voltage plus these drops, this total voltage should be equal to the supply voltage. This is the applied voltage, which is constant. Now, remember one thing, in case of transformer, this in case of transformer, what we have seen, that no load current was very small, that is, say 4 to 5% of the full load current. But in case of induction motor, the no load current is considerable, 30 to 50% of the full load current. That is because of the presence of the air gap. There is an air gap between the stator and the rotor, and the flux should be created across the air gap. So air gap has a high reluctance, so more current is required to establish the flux through the air gap. Now this is the phasor diagram. Now from this phasor diagram, we have seen what is the power of the circuit. Now the power input, for the input power, this is the input voltage V1, this is the input current I1, this is the power factor angle Phi1. So the input power per phase, obviously, it is V1 I1 cos Phi1. Now this is the input power. Now this input power, from this equation, you see that power is defined as V1 I1 cos Phi1. So it is V1 into component of the current along the voltage, or you can be explained like I1 into component of voltage along the current. So we can say that V1 is summation of minus E1, I1 R1, I1 X1. So V1 I1 cos Phi1 is equal to E1, this component of voltages, E1 minus E1 I1 cos of angle between this, I1 R1 into I1, these are in phase, and I1 X1 into I1, this is 90 degree, this I1 X1 and I1, so that component will be 0. So we have that power is minus E1 cos of this angle into I1 plus I1 R1 I1, that is I1 square R1. Now I1 square R1, that is the copper loss, and this minus C1 cos of this angle into I1, that again can be written as I1 is the summation of this IM, IC and minus I2 dashed. Now this IM is at 90 degree to E1, so that active component is 0. So the active power will be minus E1 into IC plus minus E1 into minus I2 dash into the angle between E1 and I2 dash. Now here you can see that that angle is nothing but this phi 2. So the power can be P1 is I1 square R1 minus E1 IC plus minus E1 minus I2 dash cos phi 2. Now this is the copper loss, and this one is, you can see this is represents the core loss. So the rest, this amount of power is transferred to the this secondary or transferred to the rotor. The power transferred to rotor P2, if we define it, all these quantities are per phase quantity. So this is minus E1 minus E2 dash cos phi 2. So E1 E2 dash cos phi 2. Now E1, as we have seen earlier, it is 1 by S E2 dash. So your E1 cos phi I2 dash cos phi 2 is equal to I2 dash square R2 dash. Because this is from the phasor, you can see that this is E2 dash cos phi 2 is this component. I2 dash R2 dash. So if we replace this, this will be P2 is I2 dash, this is I2 dash R2 dash by S. So I2 dash square R2 dash is equal to PS P2. So this is nothing but the per phase copper loss in the secondary. So that is equal to S into P2, where P2 is the power input to the secondary. Now, so if this is a power input to the secondary, that minus the secondary losses, that is I2 dash square R2 dash, that should be the mechanical power developed. So per phase mechanical power developed will be 1 minus S P2. So we have seen that the per phase power input to the rotor is to the per phase power mechanical power developed is to I2 square R2 dash R2 dash, that is the rotor copper loss, is in the ratio of 1 is to 1 minus S is to S. This equation is true, that is independent of the assumptions, whatever simplifications we have considered. So the per phase torque is per phase mechanical power divided by twice pi n, where n is the speed of the rotor. So 1 minus S into P2 by N is Ns into 1 minus S, where S is the slip. So twice pi Ns into 1 minus S. So it is P2 by twice pi Ns. So you can see that dividing the rotor power input by the synchronous speed omega S, this is omega S, we can get the torque. So that is why P2 is something, this value is Newton meter, and sometimes torque is expressed in synchronous watt. It is expressed as P2 synchronous watt. That means the torque which the synchronous at the synchronous speed of the machine would develop a power of 1 watt. That is the definition of synchronous watt. The net mechanical power output of the mill obtained by subtracting losses. Now, however, besides this, it is a rotating machine, so there will be some mechanical losses. That is the windage loss, bearing friction loss, and stray load loss. Stray load losses are due to the eddy current induced in the other associated iron parts. So, hello. হুম হুম কটা 4:30? ঠিক আছে। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে। Sorry. Okay, so now windage loss is due to the motion of the rotor and when the rotor is rotating, the surrounding wind will try to oppose the motion, so that creates the windage loss. So however, for any machine, this portion of the losses, that is windage and bearing friction loss, this constitute a very small percentage of the total loss. Now normally, whatever in the equivalent circuit, it is not reflected. So what we get from the equivalent circuit, we have to subtract these losses to get the power output. Now, next is that we will develop the equivalent circuit from this phasor diagram. Now, equivalent circuit is a circuit representation, a circuit consisting of passive element, that is inductance, resistance, etc., which will have the same phasor what we have represented earlier. So from the phasor diagram, we have noticed certain things, that is E1 by E2, the turns ratio is A, where A is the effective number of turns of stator by effective number of turns of rotor, that is winding factor into turn, and the rotor winding factor into turn for the fundamental. And similarly, we have seen that the ratio of the currents are 1 by N. The magnetic component of the rotor current lags the induced EMF by 90 degree magnetizing component, that is IM, lags by 90 degree. The induction machine not only changes voltage and current level, the frequency is also transformed, because in the actual circuit, the rotor frequency is not the stator frequency, but it is the slave frequency. So, so first what we do, this is the first preliminary representation. Now this will represent the stator circuit. So the resistance and inductance of the stator coil, all these are per phase quantities, are considered as lumped parameter, outside lumped parameters, and the stator and rotor phase windings creates an ideal transformer. So ideal transformer means here we do not have any consider, there is no loss, there is no leakage, and so this is an ideal transformer. But I have written as generalized transformer. That is because this circuit and this rotor circuit, those are at different frequencies. So not only the voltage level and current level into these two circuits are different, but also the frequency. So this is called a generalized transformer. This is a generalized transformer, and this is the lumped rotor parameters. So rotor, when rotating with a slip S, the induced EMF is AC2, frequency is SF. So frequency is SF, so its inductance will be SX2, where X2 is the frequency corresponding to the supply frequency F. And this is the resistance R2. This is the short circuited circuit. and this is XM. Now note one thing, that I have not considered the core loss resistance here, what we have in case of transformer. That is because that just reduces the computational burden and does not introduce much error if we do not include the core loss here, because the core loss component of current IC is very small here compared to IM. So, but the error introduced will be very small, but the computational burden is quite less. So normally this circuit is followed. Now this ideal transformer, however, has a turns ratio of A:1. So if we want to transform, first we wanted to transform is to the transformation ratio to 1:1. So if you make the transformation ratio 1:1, that we have done in case of transformer, that is we have to multiply the voltages by turns ratio, divide the current by the turns ratio, and multiply the impedances by turns ratio square. So this SAE2, this was SE2, so we multiplied by A, so this will be SAE2, so it becomes SE1. X2 dashed is equal to S A square X2, R2 dashed is A square R2, and the current I2 dashed is equal to I2 by A. Now the frequency is still SF. Now consider this secondary rotor circuit. For this rotor circuit, the current I2 dashed is given by the voltage SE1 divided by the total impedance, that is R2 dash square plus S square X2 dash square. Now if we manipulate slightly, that is if we take the S outside in this equation, so it this will be S outside, so this inside we will have R2 dash by square by S square plus X2 dash square, and so this S and this S cancel out, so this is the equation. So look into this, the current magnitude is same, but this equation the frequency is SF, but this equation the frequency is F, but it has a variable resistance, that is instead of variable frequency and so variable voltage and inductance, now we have a circuit with fixed voltage, fixed inductance, but a variable resistance and a fixed frequency. So this circuit, this is I have drawn here, is equivalent to this one, where this is a fixed voltage E1, this is X2 dash. What is variable here is this resistance R2 dashed by S. Current magnitude remains the same. So in the above equivalent circuit, this secondary can be replaced by this equivalent circuit. So if we replace here now, you can see that this is the stator and this is the rotor, now linked by an ideal transformer, not an ideal generalized transformer, because both the circuits have frequency F. Now previously what we have, the frequency of the primary and secondary were different. So we can, even if we have a turns ratio 1:1, we cannot connect them electrically because they are at different frequency. But this circuit, this has one voltage, 1:1 voltage, and the frequency are same. So we can connect them electrically. So we connect them electrically and we get this equivalent circuit. So the equivalent circuit is, this is the primary resistance, this is the secondary resistance in primary inductance, the magnetizing reactance, this is the secondary inductance, and this is the secondary resistance, this is variable. because the slip S is variable. However, as I have told that this does not include the core loss resistance RC. We can obviously we can always include the core loss resistance. So if we include the core loss resistance, this is the complete equivalent circuit. However, normally this equivalent circuit is always used to solve the equation because that reduces the computational burden and but does not without introducing much error, because as this current through the major portion of I0 is the current flowing through Xm. So the current through RC is very small. So that if we do not consider RC, very little error is introduced. What is done after we calculate the power output from there, fixed losses are subtracted. So that fixed loss will include the core loss plus the windage and bearing friction loss and the stray losses, what I have discussed earlier. Now, these losses are approximately fixed in the sense that as long as supply voltage and frequency is constant, core losses are fixed, and this windage and bearing friction loss actually depend on the speed. Now, the induction motor speed from no load to full load varies slightly because slip will increase, but the variation is very small. In the range of speed variation, the windage and bearing friction loss remains more or less constant. The variation effect is very negligible. So that is considered as constant losses and subtracted at the end of calculation. So this now this circuit, if we consider the total, this one including the core loss resistance. Now in the secondary, actually now remember one thing, that we have connected that stator equivalent and rotary equivalent circuit. We have referred to the rotary equivalent circuit to frequency level F by some manipulation, but it is physically also it can be explained in this way. Actually, the rotors in the rotor circuit, we have current flowing in the rotor winding. This current flowing in the rotor winding creates a rotating magnetic, also creates a rotating magnetic field. That is also a three-phase distribution because the primary is a three-phase distribution. So this rotating magnetic field, this as it is at slip frequency, so this rotor rotating magnetic field will rotate with respect to the rotor at slip speed, and the rotor is rotating at a speed ns into 1 minus s, and with respect to the rotor, the rotating magnetic field is rotating at a speed, slip speed, that is s into ns. So the speed of the rotating magnetic rotor rotating magnetic field with respect to the stator will be the speed of the rotor plus speed of the rotating magnetic field with respect to the rotor. So that becomes equal to ns. So whatever, though actual frequency in the rotor is sf, so whatever deflection of the quantities on the stator side is always at supply frequency. So physically also it is true that we can connect the stator and rotor equivalent circuit. Now, so, but physically speaking, under normal running condition at slip is very small. Say the motor is running with 4% slip. That means slip S is 0.04. So the frequency of the rotor circuit is 0.04 into F. So basically, when the motor is running, the rotor core loss, that is eddy current and hysteresis loss in the rotor, is negligible. So that is negligibly small, that is neglected. So the main loss in the rotor is I square R loss in the short circuited rotor circuit. So if this resistance also includes the rotor losses. So if we separate the losses, that is loss is represented by I square R to I2 square, I2 dash square, R2 dash. So R2 dash, if we separate out, then from this resistance, the rest is this R2 dash into 1 minus S minus 1. So now look into this circuit. This R1 will represent stator copper loss. RC will represent the core loss. R2 dash will represent the rotor copper loss. So rest amount of power is dissipated across this resistance. So this basically represents the mechanical power developed by the motor. So the mechanical power developed by the motor is the power dissipated across this resistance. This is also true because we have seen the power ratios in this way. So PM is equal to, from here, this I1 minus S into this by S. So this is the PM, the mechanical power developed. So we can develop the expression of the torque also. So now before going to that, approximate equivalent circuit. Now in case of transformer, we have drawn the approximate equivalent circuit by shifting the parallel or shunt branch to the input side. Here also we can always do it. We can shift the parallel branch to the input side, which makes the calculation very easier. But what happens here, remember that shifting this parallel branch to the input side will introduce quite a lot of error, because I0 is almost 30 to 50% of the full load current. So normally this circuit is not, sometimes for a very approximate calculation we can, but normally we do not, we go for the actual equivalent circuit. Now next we will derive the expression of the torque and the torque slip characteristic. Now the torque, we have seen that the power, mechanical power developed is the power dissipated across this variable resistance R2 dash into 1 minus S by minus 1. Now to derive the torque slip characteristic, this equivalent circuit for this stator portion is replaced by the Thevenin's equivalent of this portion between point A and B. Now if we want to replace this original circuit by Thevenin's equivalent, we know what will be the voltage between A and B will be the voltage drop across this. So the voltage will be V1 divided by the total impedance into JXA. That will be the Thevenin voltage, and for the Thevenin resistance will be the source is replaced by the internal resistance, so that is negligible, so it is shorted. So Thevenin equivalent impedance will be this JXM in parallel with R1 plus JX1. So our Z Thevenin is R1 plus JX1 parallel with JXM. So it will be R1 plus JX1 into JXM divided by R1 plus JX1 plus JXM. So this small x1 plus xm replaced by x1, capital X1. So this is R1 plus J small x1 into JXM by R1 plus J capital X1. So this, if we can write the write in this way, this will be R1 into JXM by the denominator plus JX1 into JXM by the denominator. Now this R1 is the part phase stator resistance, which is very small, particularly compared to X1, because X1 include XM. Between all, considering all the quantities, XM has a large value compared to R1 and X1. So if we neglect R1 in the denominator, so this becomes R1 into JXM by JX1 plus JX1 into JXM by J capital X1. So your R1, it is equal to R1 into XM by capital X1 plus JX1 into XM by capital X1. Now, so this is R Thevenin and this is X Thevenin. This is equal to R Thevenin plus X Thevenin. Similarly, V Thevenin, as we have I have told, it is V1 divided by the total impedance into JXM. Again, in this expression, if we neglect R1, this is equal to V1 into Xm by X1. So this is the, then we get this Thevenin equation, equivalent circuit. Now this, in this equivalent circuit, it is easier because this is a series circuit. So from this equivalent circuit, I2 dashed value of I2 dashed will be V Thevenin divided by the total impedance, that is root over of R Thevenin plus R2 dash by S square, X Thevenin plus X2 dashed square. So torque is, here I have multiplied by 3 because whatever we are getting is per phase. So 3 phases. So 3 by omega S into I2 dash square R2 dash by S. If you remember, we have seen that the rotor power input was given by the rotor copper loss by S. Rotor power input by the synchronous speed gives you the torque. So this is the rotor power input by synchronous speed into 3, that will be the torque. So if we replace I2 dash square here in this equation, this will be 3 by omega S into V Thevenin square into this R2 dashed by S, and in denominator the square root will go. So this is R Thevenin plus R2 dashed by S square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. Now from this equation we can observe that at starting, when S is equal to 0, the torque is positive. So the machine has a starting torque. It is self-starting. So T starting, we can get the value by putting S is equal to 1 into this equation. And this is the value of the starting torque. Now, for S almost is equal to 1, that is near to the synchronous speed, then this R Thevenin plus R2 dashed by S is almost 1. So this is, these resistance values are small. So this is very, very less than this inductance portion, because this includes Xm, if you remember, is X Thevenin plus X2 dashed. So if we neglect the resistance, the torque becomes approximately proportional to this resistance we have neglected. So R Thevenin square R2 dashed by S divided by this X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. So this is approximately proportional to 1 by S. So here there is a printing mistake. This will be 1. So near to this is for the starting. Sorry, I have made some mistake. So S equal to 1 means near to starting. So for near after starting, it is approximately, torque is approximately inversely proportional to slip. And for near to synchronous speed, when S is equal to 0, then this R2 dashed by S, that would be very large because S is small. R2 dashed is divided by a very small quantity. So this R2 dashed by S will be predominant. So this is very large compared to these other quantities. So neglecting others, approximately torque will be proportional to 3 by omega S V Thevenin square R2 dashed by S divided by R2 dashed by S square. So approximately T is proportional to S. So near to the synchronous speed, it is approximately proportional to slip, and near after starting, it is approximately proportional to, inversely proportional to slip. In between, somewhere torque is maximum, and for a value of slip, S is equal to, say, SMT. Now we can define different modes. For the motoring mode, slip varies from, slip lies between 0 to 1. 1 is starting, 0 is synchronous speed, so slip lies between 0 and 1. This is the motoring mode. The load resistance. Why it is called motoring mode? That load resistance in the equivalent circuit is R2 dash 1 by S minus 1 is positive. Slip is positive, so load resistance is positive. That means the the power, mechanical power developed is positive, and this is the power is developed is supplied to the shaft. So there are other observations. The torque has maximum value for a particular slip. Say S is equal to SMT. With this value, the value of torque is called breakdown torque. At S is equal to 1, torque is positive. This is the starting torque. We have got the values earlier. The normal operating torque is much less than the breakdown torque, and the slip is in the range of 2 to 8%. The torque speed characteristic from no load to somewhat beyond the full load are almost linear. Motor operates near to the synchronous speed, so it is approximately proportional. In that operating range, it is approximately proportional to the slip. Now, if slip is negative, if slip is less than 0, it goes to generating mode. Slip is less than 0 if your speed of the rotor is greater than the synchronous speed. That is, the rotor is rotated by some prime mover at a super synchronous speed. In that case, what will happen? That mechanical power developed will be negative, because this resistance will represent a negative resistance. That means power developed is negative. That is, the mechanical power has to be supplied to the shaft. And there is another mode, that is the braking mode, that is S is greater than 1. Now in that case, what happens? That motor runs in opposite direction to the rotating field. It can be, this happens during braking. That is, say the motor is rotating in a particular direction. Now if we change any two terminals of the supply, then what happens? Instantaneously the supply rotating fields created by the supply will rotate in the opposite direction. But the rotor speed, it is a mechanical quantity, rotor will go on rotating in the original direction. So the rotor speed and the rotating magnetic field speed will be two different directions. So that braking torque is developed, and heat is mechanical power is dissipated as heat, and the motor quickly stops to rest. This is one of the braking methods of induction motor. Obviously, if we just disconnect, the motor will stop. But if we just interchange one of the supply, then the motor will stop quicker. In some application, it might be required. So that is braking mode for S greater than 1. Now, there is a maximum breakdown torque. Maximum torque or breakdown torque for a value of slip is equal to S is equal to SMT. The torque is maximum. The maximum, this magnitude of maximum torque can be obtained by from the maximum. That is, if you look into the torque equation, is a torque equation. This torque equation, you can see that torque is proportional to the power absorbed by this resistance R2 dash by S. So if this so when this power absorbed by this resistance is maximum, the torque will be maximum. So from the maximum power transfer theorem, that is, if we look into original, this, not this one, look into this equivalent circuit, then the torque is represented proportional to the power dissipated across this resistance. So when the power dissipated across this resistance will be maximum when these resistors, according to maximum power transfer theorem, when these resistance become equal to the resistance of this internal circuit. So internal circuit means we will consider this Thevenin equivalent. So from the Thevenin equivalent, we will have this R2 dashed by this that will happen for a particular slip. Say a slip is SMT. So R2 dashed by SMT is equal to the internal resistance of the circuit. That is, this torque will be proportional to the power dissipated across this total resistance. So this total resistance equal to the internal resistance, that is R Thevenin plus Jx Thevenin plus Jx2 dashed. So magnitude, equating the magnitude, it will be R2 dashed by SMT root over R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. So SMT, the slip at which maximum torque occurs, will be R2 dashed by root over of R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. So note one thing, the slip at which the maximum torque occurs is directly proportional to rotor resistance. Another thing also, if you look into this starting torque, the starting torque is also directly proportional to the rotor resistance. So these two values are proportional to the rotor resistance. So now we can find out the maximum torque. So by putting this slip value in the torque expression, so Tmax will be 3 by omega s R Thevenin square into R2 dash by SMT, R Thevenin plus R2 dash by SMT whole thing square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. Now this R2 dash by SMT can be replaced by this quantity. So replaced this by root over of R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. This also will be replaced in this expression. So this denominator becomes R Thevenin plus root over of R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square whole square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. Now if we expand the denominator, it will be this quantity square plus 2 into R Thevenin into this quantity, this second one, plus square of this, that means root over will go, so this will be R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square plus this one. So this becomes, you can say we have 2 R Thevenin square plus 2 into X Thevenin plus X2 dash square. So this plus this quantity. So if we write it these two together, so this will look like this. The manipulation, if we took root over of R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash outside, so this will be inside, we will have root over of this plus twice R Thevenin. So these two will cancel out. So approximate these two, we can get a 0.5. So this will be 0.5 V Thevenin square root over of R Thevenin square plus X Thevenin plus X2 dash square plus twice R Thevenin. Now look into this equation. R2 dash, it is not dependent on R2 dashed. So we have seen that the slip at which maximum torque occurs is directly proportional to the rotor resistance, but the value of the maximum torque or the breakdown torque is independent of the rotor resistance. So if you now draw the whatever I discussed, if you now draw the torque slip characteristics, now this is the starting torque, it is a positive value. Now near to Is sleep equal to 1, it is approximately inversely proportional to sleep. Then at SMT is in maximum, then it is decreasing, and in this region it is approximately proportional to the sleep. So this is the motoring mode, 1 to 0. Now for negative it will have the generating mode, the same thing will be replicated in this axis. The values will be same, and the braking mode is more than 1, so this will be the braking mode. So this is the total torque sleep characteristic. This is the starting torque, this is the maximum torque, this is the sleep at which maximum torque occurs. Sleep, this is increasing in this direction. So if we say speed is in this direction. You can see. Now, so what we have seen that if we can change the rotor resistance, so what will change? The sleep at which maximum torque occurs, also the starting torque will change directly proportional to the rotor resistance, but the value of the maximum torque is independent of the rotor resistance. So if we, now this is not possible for squirrel cage motor, the rotor resistance is fixed, but if we go for the slip ring motor, we can insert resistance externally. So for a slip ring motor, if this one I have just drawn for the motoring mode. So if this is the basic characteristic for with R2 dash, now if we insert resistance, so the characteristic will shift like this. That is, maximum value remains same, but the slip at which maximum torque occurs, that will increase, and also the starting torque will increase. So there is a value of resistance, say R2-2, this is not square, R2-2, for which the maximum torque itself occurs at starting. If we increase the resistance more than that, maximum torque will occur in this range. So this is the slip ring motor torque slip characteristic with varying rotor resistance. Now this is so one advantage is that if this is your load torque, now for normal condition, what is the operating speed? This operating speed when the load torque and the motor characteristic, load characteristic and motor characteristic intersect. So this is the normal speed. Now if we insert rotor resistance for the same load, the motor will run with lower speed, that is with higher slip. So by insert resistance, we can have some speed control for slip ring motor. Also, we can have a high value of starting torque for slip ring motor. These are the advantage of slip ring motor. Otherwise, slip ring motor has disadvantage of that moving contact of brush and slip ring. So today I will stop here. Next day we will develop the power expression. Similarly, we will have power expression, almost similar parts. So we will have the next class on next Thursday. Okay.